Hey guys, Mr. Hyatt here. We're talking about Chapter 11, Section 3 today. And you can see on the screen that the title of this section is Forest Management. So basically what we're talking about is how do we control what happens on public lands. Can't say a lot about what happens on private land in terms of timber resources, but we do have a responsibility to sustainably harvest the timber and the trees that we find in national forests and national parks. So let's dive in looking at national forests first. You see the first natural forest was established in 1905. Basically what we wanted to do was grow timber and protect watersheds. So started out with kind of the goal of supplying our country and sort of switched to, yes, we need timber, but we also need to be able to enjoy our forests. We need to preserve the habitat for wildlife. And in some national forests, we need to preserve mining resources. So if we're going to mine in a national forest and pollute, we should probably make sure that we keep the forest as intact as possible so that it can do some of those ecosystem services we've talked about with water purification and soil filtration, things along those lines. So the law that requires that sort of mediates all of national forest management, you see, was passed in 1976. So 71 years after the first national forest was established, we figured out how we should manage them. You see kind of the requirements there in bullet 1 and 2. Requires that renewable resource management plans be made for each national forest. Now remember, we're not talking about renewable energy here, we're talking about renewable resources. So we're talking about timber, we're talking about trees, we're talking about water, we're talking about life. So we're talking about things that can be renewed. All those plans are required to be consistent with the principles of multiple use and maximum sustainable yield. So we want to be able to use forests recreationally. We want to be able to use forests to harvest timber. We want to be able to do a lot of different things, and we want to be able to do those for a long time. So the National Forest Management Act says that we have to do those things. We have to take the future into account. You see that logging has declined in national forests since the passage of the act, but like any other law, it's subject to political influence. If a certain entity or a certain political party wants to open up logging, they certainly could override this act that's been a law for 40 plus years now. So let's switch gears and talk about logging on private land. You see here that most logging in the U.S. does take place on privately owned land, specifically tree plantations. You see in the picture there on the right a good example of a tree plantation. Yesterday I kind of described it as cemetery rows. A natural forest isn't going to grow in rows like this. If you drive past one of these forests, you know it because you can see right down the road. It looks like a really amplified or bigger version of a cornfield. A tree plantation, if you have ever gone and cut down your own Christmas tree, that's what we're talking about. It's going to be an even-age monoculture with very little variety and biodiversity because you're going to seed all the same types of trees. You're going to buy one kind of seed, you're going to put them all down, and you're going to grow them that way. My Christmas tree farm, I love it, but there's not a lot of biodiversity. There's maybe 6 different species of evergreen trees, and that's it. Excuse me. Notice this bottom point here. If we can grow fast-growing timber in private land or on private land, then we don't have to log our national forests for our natural biodiversity. So it's sort of a way to protect our natural biodiversity. Sorry, I kind of stumbled through that, but it's sort of being intentional about where we grow the trees that we're going to use. Are we going to use it for paper? We're going to use it for for building furniture, things like that. We can have these monocultures in specific spots so that our natural ecosystems are preserved. Anytime you talk about forests and trees, you got to talk about forest fires. So there are kind of two aspects of fire policy that you need to kind of have a little bit of an idea about. In terms of fire suppression, anytime you're suppressing, you're minimizing or you're controlling. So you see here you're suppressing small fires, but that's going to increase the likelihood of a larger dangerous fire. So you're not going to burn off anything. You're trying to prevent all forest fires. So things like limbs and sticks and dead leaves and things like that are all going to build up on the ground, and all it takes is one lightning strike and the forest goes up in flames. So a lot of times we'll do what's called a prescribed burn, where we'll have a fire that we can control. We'll have a small fire that burns up those limbs and sticks and leaves, and then that helps us prevent bigger consuming fires. Occasionally they burn out of control, and of course whenever that happens we're going to have a scare, but most of the time controlled burns, prescribed burns, are effective and prevent big time fires from happening later. Another important law building off of that is this Healthy Forest Restoration Act. Notice one of our more recent laws that we've looked at happened in 2003. So that encourages prescribed burns. Again, we want to get rid of undergrowth, we want to get rid of brush so that we don't have bigger fires. It's going to promote salvage logging, where we're pulling out trees, we're pulling out undergrowth, we're pulling out snags, we're pulling out some trees that have fallen over that we can still save. So you see there that it does it is seen as harmful by some scientists and environmental advocates because it does promote removing biodiversity. Can slow forest regrowth because you're getting rid of some of this underbrush, so it doesn't get a chance to grow. Occasionally salvage logging can promote wildfires and again destroy snags, so those are things that wildlife are going to live in. So that's kind of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act. Last but not least, sustainable forestry products. So there are independent organizations that certify wood products as produced sustainably. You see the FSC there it's kind of the hardest one to get, so it's kind of the most prestigious to get. And certified wood is of course going to cost more to produce. It's going to cost more to buy because you're doing it sustainably. The cheapest form of harvesting trees is to clear cut. We don't do that in sustainable forestry. We're going to selectively cut, and that's going to be a little bit more expensive. That price is going to be passed along to the consumer. So there are always issues, but there are also always ways to do better. So that's forestry. Make sure you turn in your notes before you leave today.